Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is the latest game retelling the story of Dragon Ball Z. Before this, we had Xenoverse, DBZ sagas, Legacy of Goku, and probably some more games I'm forgetting. I'm a huge Dragon Ball fan and spent a ton of time playing through the Legacy of Goku RPG games released on the Game Boy Advance, so naturally I was very excited to see a new Dragon Ball RPG being released. Sagas and the Legacy of Goku were fun games in their own right, but they had limitations in what they did, making it come up short of what I wanted out of a Dragon Ball game. Sagas was stuck on rails the whole time and lacked the open world exploration that I wanted. The Legacy of Goku, while more open world and adventure-like, was very limited in what could be explored and done because the flying was very shallow or non-existent. But here comes DBZ Kakarot to give me all I ever wanted in a Dragon Ball RPG game. One of the most appealing parts of Dragon Ball is the ability to fly, so being able to soar through the open skies in a vast world with a plethora of activities to do was a huge draw. The downside is, activities are unlocked as the story progresses, which can take a bit of time to get through. But once that happens, it's very easy to get lost in the world. I've spent 4 hours in one sitting just speeding through the air while farming items, doing side quests, or strengthening my characters. Being able to move freely above everything else without any invisible borders or walls felt really good and made exploration more enjoyable. I didn't feel restricted in where I could go or what I could do, so it enticed me to keep doing it and exploring more of the areas. However, flying does have its shares of issues crop up from time to time. Depending on the camera angle, being too low, which happens often when trying to collect items from the ground, can obscure my view since it causes debris to kick up, blocking the view of the characters. On the other hand, most objects in the world like trees and large boulders can be directly plowed through and destroyed without a care in the world, so it wasn't that big a deal. The only thing I couldn't fly through are mountains, but these didn't give me any issues as the game provides nice flight controls to get around them. While flying through the skies, many items can be seen scattered throughout the world that can be collected, which are needed for systems like cooking, character progression, and car and robot development. Ingredients can be collected from trees, rivers, farms, and any other natural resources for cooking. Fishing, an infamous minigame implemented in a lot of JRPGs, also make its way into Kakarot and is another way to collect more ingredients. Once enough ingredients have been collected, a meal can be cooked at a few different spots, each having their own benefits. Camps can be found in many parts of the map, which allow you to cook and eat something on the spot for a small stat boost, something I didn't find particularly useful since the boosts were insignificant. Chi-Chi can cook a bento to take out on the field to use whenever, offering a bigger stat boost compared to the camp. She can also cook a full course meal, giving the maximum boost possible, but this requires a lot more items and is not portable. The boosts given are temporary and permanent, adding another way to reward those who explore the world instead of just rushing through the main story. Food is a great mechanic, not only because of the permanent stat boosts, but the temporary stat boosts are nothing to scoff at, getting me through some really tough battles. It's another thing I can keep coming back to after exploring that's easy to get into since ingredients are plentiful and the permanent buffs continue to stack on top of each other, unlike other games like Bloodstain where a food's permanent buff is only applied when eaten for the first time. Materials can also be found, scattered throughout the world, and are used to upgrade a car or a robo-walker. These are used to play a time attack minigame, where the objective is to reach checkpoints spread around the map under a certain amount of time, and weren't that interesting to me. The car time attack wasn't bad, and was easy enough to get through, but the robo-walker time attack was terrible. In a game where I'm used to traveling at high speeds, slowing down to a crawl to get through some checkpoints while jumping around cliffs was not my idea of a fun time. On the bright side, there were useful rewards at the end, but I'd rather just keep finding Dragon Balls and making wishes for items. That said, this minigame still adds more optional activities to the game, which is never a bad thing. In addition to all the different items that can be collected in the world, there are also a variety of colored orbs in the sky that can be collected. These orbs are usually placed in a sequence that outlines a potential flight path you can take to different areas of the map, giving me another thing to collect while also simultaneously showing me different paths to different areas and resources. Each character has a skill tree containing new moves or stronger versions of the same move that can be learned by spending these orbs. As the story progresses, more and more recognizable abilities are unlocked, like the Super Saiyan transformations, or Vegeta's final flash attack. There are also level requirements in addition to story requirements that need to be met before being able to learn the skill. To add more of a Dragon Ball feel to the game, some skills are also locked behind training sessions because that's how all characters get stronger in the series. At the training grounds, a fight has to be cleared, which can be difficult if not taken seriously. Besides the traditional character progression through the skill trees, DBZ Kakarot also has a cool system called communities, giving more options to passively strengthen the Z fighters. There are 7 types of communities, each with a different grid layout and different bonuses pertaining to different systems in the game, such as combat, cooking, and exploration. As more of the cast from DBZ are met, they become available to be placed into a community. Each member has a number representing their contribution to a certain community, with higher numbers resulting in a higher level community, allowing even better bonuses to be unlocked. Some characters' contribution is capped at 25, while others may have a significantly lower cap. However, pure stats are not the only things that matter when deciding who to put in a community. Certain adjacent members connected to each other can gain a bonus which can offset the lower values. Min-maxing a progression system is always something I like to do, and I've spent many hours figuring out the best combinations as I unlock more characters to use. It's work, but it's super satisfying being able to figure out that optimal setup by myself, and it never felt like a chore. Going into combat with these powered up characters felt great because the actual fighting was fun. It's very easy to pick up and learn and doesn't feel punishing when making mistakes, unlike Xenoverse where you have to manage all your resources and play a bit smarter. Sometimes I just want to throw down in the sky and fire ki blasts at people without having to worry about it being safe, which is what I want from an action RPG Dragon Ball game. There is a one button combo that's easy to mash out, no timing is needed to perform it, and it's very easy to follow up with a super attack. Sometimes different members of the Z fighters also help in combat and join the party depending on the story progress. They can extend combos or after building enough meter, be used to perform a powerful Z combo, which is basically just a team attack. It feels great just dishing out combos, performing super attacks and hitting a ton of enemies, or just mass dodging attacks without worrying about resources. It might be a bit too simple, but I think lowering the bar for entry isn't exactly a bad thing, especially in a single-player action RPG game and not a brawler like Xenoverse. Although having a more intricate combo system would have been a nice addition to give more variety to combat. That said, there are also difficult fights too. Sometimes it takes more than just mashing out attacks and dodges to win. Well, just a little bit more. There are supervillains loitering around different regions that can be challenged and are stronger than the normal trash mobs or story bosses that are encountered. Even some training battles can be quite difficult, forcing me to be a little less aggressive and play more defensively. So despite the combat being a bit simplified, it can still be challenging too. The only annoying thing was the encounter rate. While flying through the world, there are trash mobs littered throughout that will give chase if you're seen. It was easy enough to keep moving along to avoid combat, but once you stood still to do something, then wham, you get into combat. And there are a lot of these guys around. The upside is, if I was a higher level than them, I can crash into them for an instant victory. It's easy enough to do and doesn't require me to make direct contact. I just have to be close enough to touch them with the aura, but it's not always the case that I'm a higher level or that it's convenient to change directions. Sometimes I just want to beeline it to the Dragon Balls without having to worry about getting jumped from behind. As far as the story goes, it was the weakest part of the game. Since it's a retelling of the story of Dragon Ball Z, it also kept some of its faults, not being able to improve on the pacing. I'm sure all of us fans have heard all the jokes about Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, it's funny because it's true. It doesn't help that I already know what's gonna happen, so I would like for things to move along a bit quicker. This wasn't an issue in the beginning with the Saiyan saga, but with Namek and beyond, I just wanted a way to get through all the cutscenes quicker, but without skipping it altogether. There was just way too much talking and not enough fighting. Oh, how I wish I had a turbo button right now, like in all the Kiseki games. It's also not like they didn't remove parts either. A lot of things were cut out because I assumed the writers also assumed the players would know everything. A lot of filler was cut, but also a lot of time used to develop the characters in the show were also removed in the game. For instance, when Piccolo calls Gohan his only friend, I knew what he meant. They developed a strong relationship when they trained together for 6 months, but in game, time just skipped forward without much development. I mean, Piccolo gave Gohan some apples, so I guess there's that. While not a big deal, a few changes also bugged me a little bit. A few scenes were changed from what was shown in the anime. For example, the iconic over 9,000 scene that became a meme has changed in the game, for both Japanese and English dialogue, to being 5,000, with the Saiyan's reaction being more tame than it was in the show. It would have been nice to relive the moment in the game. Another example is the Namek scene where Gohan was supposed to get kneed in the stomach by Vegeta, although I can understand why that was taken out.
That means we have to look out for one another. Understand?
Yikes. Useless fetch quests were also added into the main story, such as when Android 16 had to get repaired and I was tasked with finding the materials to fix him up. I mean, it's not like Capsule Corp is a billion-dollar tech company or anything. Nah, it's okay, just make me do more busy work and slow down the main story some more. Another thing that dragged down the game was performance and the huge amount of load screens present throughout the game. I was on the PS4 Pro with a solid state drive, and it didn't feel great on the system, especially after extended playtime. It would often hitch for a few seconds when autosaving during the main story, which made it pretty annoying as the voice dialogue would continue to play, but everything on my screen would be frozen, and this would happen often. Along with FPS drops, it's clear the PS4 has some issues running Kakarot. There were also way too many load screens and long load times, although the day 1 patch notes did say the load times were improved. I hate to see how bad it was before this fix, but it's still not great now. When farming Dragon Balls, which usually requires 7 maps to be visited, that's 7 load screens to go through. Since they have large maps with a ton of assets in it, I can understand the need to load the map every time, but it does get tiring after a while. Good thing I have YouTube right next to me. All that said, I still enjoyed my time playing through Kakarot. Sure, there were definitely issues with the game. There are more performance issues than what I typically experience, as I rarely mention performance in reviews, but it didn't make the game unplayable. Far from it, in fact. It didn't stop me from being able to do all the things I'm able to do and have fun with it. And getting through the main story may be slow and could have been done better, but it's Dragon Ball Z, and I've already seen the anime like 10 times over, so it's understandable that my impatience is somewhat unwarranted. Seeing iconic moments from the anime in the game, like when Gohan loses it against Cell and goes Super Saiyan 2, was still great to watch and didn't lose any of its original feeling from when I first saw it. The cel-shaded graphics and art style in Kakarot does Akira Toriyama's style justice, and all the scenes look great, very reminiscent of its anime counterparts. But at the end of the day, all I ever wanted to do was just fly around, blow things up, and just get lost in the world of Dragon Ball and all its characters in an open world RPG setting. And Dragon Ball Z Kakarot delivers on that front, offering what is probably the best DBZ RPG experience since the Legacy of Goku 2 that really scratched the itch that I had lingering for a long time.